19th century, when men tried to get the voting rights for both men and women, Americans wanted to make a difference to achieve a change in the Constitution. Many may ask, why can't women vote? It's just a simple vote that goes in the ballot box. Well, women in that time period were considered as property. Men looked at them as something worthless or nothing. Hence, society wanted nothing to do with them. For the most part, reactions varied. Several generations thought getting women's rights was great. Those who agreed earned the support from the women's suffrage. They showed their dedication by giving lectures and marching the streets with signs. They also protested, lobbied, and practiced civil disobedience to achieve what many thought was a radical change in the Constitution. A change in the Constitution meant women's rights to vote was granted. By 1920, women had gained their right to vote. However, many couldn't get to see that their hard work was being paid off.
The National Women's Rights Convention was created in 1850. It brought together for the first time many of those who had been working individually for women's rights. While conventions provided places where women could support each other, it also highlighted some of the challenges of unifying strongly opinionated leaders into one movement. Women's rights activists faced difficult questions. Should the movement include or exclude men? Who was to blame for the women's inequality? What remedies should they seek? And how could women best convince others of their need for equality? After this group was created, it inspired Susan B. Anthony to join the cause.
It was important to get women these rights because they were unequal to men. Since America is a democracy, everyone deserves to vote. At this time, only the men were able to vote. Women had no say in who would be elected to office. If they didn't like the candidate, they were unable to vote against him, which is unfair. The women came up with a three-part strategy for suffrage. The first part of the plan was to try and convince state legislators to grant women the right to vote. The second part was to pursue court cases to test the 14th Amendment. States denying their male citizens the right to vote would lose congressional representation. The third and last part was to push for national constitutional amendment to grant women the right to vote. Doing this would make the voting right permanent, therefore solving our problem with voting inequality.
Back then, women didn't have jobs. They were to stay in the house all day, doing chores and taking care of the children. Fighting for women's voting right not only gave them an excuse to get out of the house, but a way to rise above what a men thought a woman needed to do. It also gave them a voice, and they were able to state their opinion about the matter.
Susan B. Anthony led hardship throughout her life. Although she was the leader of the National Women's Suffrage Association, she was arrested for voting. She was unable to speak in her defense. Her dedication was helpful for passing the 19th Amendment because she wrote the Susan B. Anthony Amendment in 1818. When she died, only 4 states were allowed women voting.
Susan B. Anthony assumed the leadership of the women's rights movement. Eventually, she became the only leader remembered in history books. Her image was used to inspire a new generation of feminists in the 1970s.
Former slave Isabella Bonfrey changed her name to Sojourner so she could take the journey to speak and preach the truth about God's Word. She escaped slavery and was the first to win a case before a white man. She is most known for the speech at Ohio's Women's Rights Convention, Ain't I a Woman, in 1851. Many believed she became a national symbol for strong black women. After the speech, the audience gave her an applause and a standing ovation. A famous saying led by her was, "If one woman could turn the world upside down, then all of us women today can turn it back." Stanton, along with her husband, became members of the American Anti-Slavery Society. Later, in London, they traveled with partner Ma to the World Anti-Slavery Convention as delegates. Then later, in 1848, they organized the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls. Over 300 men and women protested the mistreatment of women's social, economical, political, and religious life. This led to the Declaration of Sentiments that was modeled by the Declaration of Independence, which emphasized on injuries and usurpations that men had brought upon women. It also claimed how men stopped women from being granted all rights and privileges that they had, including the right to vote.
The Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 formulated the demand for women's suffrage in the United States. After the Civil War, agitation for the cause became more prominent. In 1869, the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution gave the vote to black men, which caused controversy as women's suffrage campaigners such as Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton refused to endorse the amendment, as it did not give the vote to women.
The 19th Amendment stated all American women were allowed to vote. It was established on August 18, 1920, but passed on June 4, 1919 by Congress. Achieving this milestone required a lengthy and difficult struggle.
It was economics rather than politics that changed women's roles in American society, and this created greater momentum for the women's rights movement. Women today should honor those who fought so passionately because they're the reason women are able to vote today. Without them, we wouldn't have that right, and therefore, there would never be the 19th Amendment. Few early supporters lived to see the final victory in 1920, and it's a shame because they were the ones who had the biggest impact on the female population to fight for their rights. If they're the ones who started it, they deserve to be the ones to finish it. Section 1 of the 19th Amendment states, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." The amendment was the culmination of the women's suffrage movement, which fought at both state and national levels to achieve the vote. Beginning in the 1800s, women organized, petitioned, and picketed to win the right to vote, but it took them decades to accomplish their purpose. Between 1878, when the amendment was first introduced in Congress, and August 18, 1920, when it was ratified, champions of voting rights for women worked tirelessly. Some pursued a strategy of passing suffrage acts in each state. 9 Western states adopted women's suffrage legislation by 1912. This challenged male-only voting laws in the courts. Some felt so strongly that they held parades, silent vigils, and hunger strikes to get their point across. More often than not, supporters met fierce resistance. Opponents heckled, jailed, and sometimes physically abused them, just for standing up and saying, hey, you know what? Women deserve the right to vote just like men do. Today's society, women have the ability to vote for whoever they feel deserves to be in office, without a problem. If a major reason why people come to America was because everyone had equal rights, then they should have only started coming in 1920, because that's when women were finally equal to men.